Hello, hello. This is Christine, your host today, and today's new episode of KSM Podcast, Growing Business Online with Christina. And I'm so excited today, a new episode to have my special guest speaker far away from USA, JP Maroney. Welcome to the new episode of KSM Podcast.
Hey, glad to be on. It's been a long time coming, so I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you today. And I know that you are, investor, speaker, consultant, run businesses more than 30 years, co-authors of the books, author, podcaster. So today we have to talk a lot and help our audience to grow. So as I introduce a little bit, you tell us a little bit about you. Introduce yourself for our audience.
Yeah, that we'll start 35 years building companies, a variety of different things, but it seems like most everything that I've done has been revolving around media over the years. I've owned magazines. My wife and I built a magazine publishing company in the late 90s, sold that, went on the speaking circuit. Around 2003, 4, I got pretty heavily involved in the internet for the first time and never looked back. So a lot of businesses and things that we've done since then have been primarily rooted in the internet. So I still speak on stages, still, as you mentioned, appear on podcast and media, radio, TV, publishing books. Right now, we're building podcast networks and working with a lot of authorities and experts to build out their own show, whether it's a local show for a local business owner that primarily markets geographically, or someone that's on a national or global stage and is looking to build their authority status as well as connect with some of the people that would help them or that they could help and collaborate with. So yeah, I love coming on the podcast because I'm very bullish on podcast. I believe that it's one of the power tools in our arsenal in business. So if you're working with, or if people in this audience are online entrepreneurs or business owners, it's definitely a power tool to be a host, to be a guest, to be connected somehow working with podcasting, and we can talk about that and explore that some if you want as well.
Yes, we can do, and JP Maroney, I met you online, and and the first impression was to know to you about your podcasting, and you have some interview, and it was amazing. And after that, we connected. So, but through your biography and what you do, it's a quite we need maybe a few episodes to talk about. But today, maybe in this very turbulent environment, and also, and all those kind of things what happen in the world and economics and everything, yeah, that could be good to talk about maybe because about podcasting also, and why podcast is important and how do you connect with that, and just like for our audience, maybe for people who wanted to start their own business podcast.
Yeah, it's interesting because here in the US, we saw an election. Some people have felt like the election was actually won based on influence from podcast. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but I do believe that the most recent presidential election was greatly affected or impacted by podcasting. Our now President Trump, in his second term here in the U.S., appeared on a variety of podcasts, and he talked about that his son was actually one of the people that instigated that and said, "Hey, Dad, you need to pay attention to these podcasts. They have substantial reach as well as loyalty and trust with their audiences." And I think part of that is transparency. When you look at a podcast, it's not quite as polished or packaged as traditional terrestrial radio or TV or traditional legacy media, and seems to get a little deeper under the surface and allow people to sort of tell their story unscripted, uncut, in most cases. So I think that's part of it. But as I mentioned in the beginning of the conversation, I look at podcast as, if you're specifically talking about a business owner or an entrepreneur, or maybe some form of expert that's a thought leader and they're trying to leverage that thought leadership or that expertise to become what I call an undisputed authority in their space. So the preeminent go-to person that when someone thinks of that category, they think of that person. So, if you thought of um, rockets in space, somebody would go Elon Musk right now. But how do you do that in your own space, no matter how large or small it might be? And podcasting can definitely give you a leg up or an advantage in your market by doing that. So I like it as a power tool, but what is so cool about it is that here we are, we're connecting. When this recording stops, you and I likely will have a conversation about what are you looking for in your business? How can I connect you with or introduce you to other people that are important? You might do the same for me. We might say, hey, man, we should collaborate on something, create a product, create a book, create a whatever. Um, maybe I have a solution you need. Maybe you have a solution I need. It's just there are so many directions that this can go from. And so I look at it as a great networking tool and the ability to have meaningful conversations and just happen to document it by recording it. And when you do that, then you're creating content. If anybody follows Gary Vaynerchuk, he often says, don't create, document. And this is a great way to document a meaningful conversation. And then always there's those little magic moments, what I call the moments of truth, or those times when you go, man, that was really good. And by capturing it, then you can turn that into content that you could put out there into the world, and maybe that adds value to someone else's life. So it's also a great foot in the door strategy. I have looked at both as a guest, but especially as a host. There are people who you might never be able to get your foot in the door or connect with them had it not been for the podcast. There are people that may not, because they don't know you. They might not take your call or care about your email, cold email, or outreach on LinkedIn or something like that. But if you reach out to them genuinely and authentically, invite them on a podcast, and let them talk about their book, talk about their company, talk about their story, to talk about what they're trying to do or accomplish, and do it in a very authentic and benevolent way. Those people will often come on that podcast, and then you have that open door and that connection where you may never have had that relationship had you not used the podcasting as a tool for that connection. And so I see it as a foot in the door strategy. I see it as a networking and connecting and building relationships, building reciprocity. I give, you give, and over time we go, man, we want to give back to the other person. And then also, obviously, it positions you as an authority. If you know your stuff, when you're on one of these podcasts and you can talk about it from a position of experience and expertise and authority, it certainly elevates you in the mind of the listener or the viewer. And then finally, as I said, it becomes this content creation machine. We have a new tool that we're building. It's about to go live called Authority CX, or uh, the Authority Content Multiplier. And it'll take a single piece of video off on a podcast like this and then turn it into up to 100 pieces or more of additional content from blogs, infographics, reels and shorts, mid form, long form, articles, emails, you name it. If you think about like Gary Vaynerchuk's approach, I think he has right now 25 to 30 full-time people on his content team that orbit around him. This technology will do that for someone like you or I who may not be able to invest in having 25 to 30 people orbiting around us full time creating content. It'll help us leverage that ability to do that. So podcasts, I'm just big on them. It also, if you're a speaker, I was talking to ChatGPT about this the other day. I've been on many, many speaking stages to date, over 2,500 workshops, keynotes, webinars, et cetera. A lot of presentations over the last 35 years. And with the internet, you no longer have to get permission to speak. You just hit record, right? And you can speak to an audience of 1 to 1 million to 1 billion. And it gives you great reach, and it creates a frictionless, democratized stage where anybody can suddenly get on and speak. And so podcasts, I think, really help you work through your thoughts and how you articulate things. I don't know how many people do this. I actually do it. Anytime I record a meeting, whether it's you and I meeting privately and talking business or something, or when I go on one of these, I run it through AI afterwards and analyze it and say, give me the talking points, the key takeaways, the power phrases. What could I create content from this and write an article about it, or a white paper, or a free report, or something of value to my audiences? So podcasting does that. I know that was a lot. That was kind of a long answer to your question, but I'm big on podcasting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite great. I love that. And when you mentioned podcasting, I was so shy in front of camera, and then I wanted because I talk about many times how I started podcast in my episodes, but to the podcasting, as you mentioned, there are people who just come to you, or VAs, just research something and say, okay, I have my boss, or person who I work with, for who I work. It could be so fit speaker on your podcast, or referrals. There are people just who refer, and also it's interesting that I get amazing answers to that amazing people, just to ask them on podcast and just
Explain what you're saying. I'm curious. What do you mean amazing answers?
when I want, it was once, what is difference between coaching and, let's say, coaching and consulting or teaching? There are sometimes my questions with myself, and there are people, guest speakers in front of, and I always get some answers what I'm curious about.
Perfect. Yeah. So you're getting free advice, and sometimes free advice is worth exactly what you paid for it. But in this respect, I agree. If you have someone who's genuinely an authority on their topic, or an expert on their topic, you're getting a chance to ask them in kind of an intimate setting, right? There's not a lot going on. They're focused on answering you and responding, and you get a pretty good answer. That's a great. You're very, very right and very smart to do that. So
And when you mention book, for example, just imagine using AI, all those kind of things, how many guest speakers you had or will have also. And also you can create such amazing ebook or hard copy with those, especially when they give you permission to do that, like with that content or the advice, or when you do transcriptions, and then you can create all those content put in the amazing book. I mean, so
yeah,
there.
there's are you familiar with a guy by the name of David Rubenstein? He's in the private equity space. Do you know him?
No, 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 I don't know
So
him.
he's with a company called Carlyle Group out of, I think they're based out of Washington, D.C. Very big, many, many billions of dollars in assets under management. But David is one of, I believe, three founders of that. And he created well, he has a podcast now, but he did a bunch of interviews at the Economic Forum. I think it's there in DC or something, but it was on stage, sitting at two chairs and with a live audience, but interviewing, top leaders, including Bill Gates and a variety of corporate and financial markets and political leaders and that sort of thing. And if you go on Amazon right now and look up David Rubenstein leadership book, he has a book on leadership, and all it is the transcripts. He didn't even rewrite it. Now, today with AI, you can re-summarize that and make it more readable. But all they did is just publish the transcripts word for word. It looks like they might have cleaned them up a little, but it's just each chapter is a different interview of someone. And I talk about this. If you take a podcast and let's say you only do one interview per week, and you look at it like a season, like Netflix, or in the old school TV world, it was very confined. You would have like a 13-week season. So every week on a TV show, they'd come out with a new episode, and at the end of 13 weeks, that was a season, right? So you can look at a podcast very much like that and do season one and interview people for 13 weeks, 13 different guests. At the end of that, so a conversation like today, let's say we talk 35 to 45 minutes, the average person speaks at 150 words a minute. I'm from Texas, and I often say that in Texas it's 72. But the average person speaks at 150 words a minute. And if you look at that, for every 10 minutes of conversation, that's another 1,500 words. So 20 minutes, 3,000 words, right? So it starts to really add up and become something. So if you take each one of those interviews and make them a chapter in a book, you could publish 4 books a year of valuable, good information, and you didn't say a word. You didn't say anything. And I'll talk about this if you want to. I did a book, my wife and I co-wrote the book, but I used that same method many years ago on the speaking, when I was on the speaking stage more on the circuit. And we used an interview process to actually infiltrate an industry. And we came as an outsider. I'd never worked in that industry, but we took over the industry and became positioned as really an elevated authority and an expert because of doing these interviews like this. So it's extremely powerful.
It's such a powerful and very very challengeable. I mean, because as you mentioned, you and your wife, you were in such a other part of industry and then start doing something like that, which is congratulations on your decision to do that.
I even created a product around, it's not even available, so I'm not pitching this product, but maybe I could give it away for free. I could put it back online. It's been many
Yeah,
years
we'll
that
put on
I did
links,
this. But
or
yeah, but we could give it away free. I don't even have a problem with that. But I did a product called Fast Niche Formula years ago, and it was all based on the idea that if you want to enter a niche market and you want to take over that market really fast, go interview the top 10 to 20 people in that market. You not only and package that information into a product, or in this case maybe a podcast series and a product or whatever, but package that information, then turn around and offer that information back to the world. So let's say tomorrow, and in fact I was on the Restaurant Association website this weekend looking at some other places that we might want to get booked to speak, and they have some conferences coming up, including a restaurant expo or something in November. So I was looking at that, and I was looking at the list of speakers and the people that they have. If I wanted to go take over tomorrow, go take over the restaurant industry and become a speaker and maybe an advisor or a consultant or whatever, I already have relevant knowledge that would be good to them. So, my ability to generate leads, to market, to follow up on people. We have a technology platform that we built called Power Suite that it makes it easy to follow up and get reviews and all kinds of stuff. So I have a reason to go talk to that audience, but I don't necessarily have the positioning. So if I were trying to go into that market tomorrow and really dominate, I would go look up who are the top 10 to 50 to 100 independent restaurateurs, people that own one or more restaurants, but they're a private company, not a big chain, right? A big restaurateurs. I would reach out to them. I would get them on an interview, maybe for a podcast, but certainly for this book that I would create, this training program or educational series that I would create. I would interview them exactly like my wife and I did, and I'll try to find that book and show you, for the Air Conditioning Contractors Association. Then I take those transcripts, synthesize that information, put it in a book, put it in trainings, put it in content, put it out there into the universe using my Authority CX type thing where you blast it out. Every recording becomes 100 or more pieces of content. And I could completely take over that space, having never owned or run a restaurant myself. I waited tables for 2 weeks many years ago after my wife and I had a big crash in 90, 94, somewhere like that. I was very young. It was one of my first early businesses, and we failed, went bankrupt, lost our home, had to move into an apartment, had to start all over again. And I went to work at Olive Garden waiting tables. And I made it 2 weeks. I was like, this is not for me. But that's all I've ever done in the restaurant industry other than eat, too much probably. But if I wanted to take over the restaurant industry, that's what I would do. And it's just this interview process. It's how Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich. He went and interviewed all the wealthy people, right? Carnegie paid for him his way or funded him or financed him to go around and interview all these well-known or well-established wealthy people. And he ended up writing Think and Grow Rich from it and built an empire around that content. So yeah, it's very possible. It's powerful leveraging off of or hijacking, someone else's authority and content and information and resources.
As you mentioned before, like that guy from DC, Washington, DC, created a book without just put it on organically, like he does transcription and that's it. So
That's
it's
it.
very interesting, you know. So
Yeah,
we
it's funny,
can.
but I have a funny story about that. So when when Tanya, this is the book. So here's what happened. When I was getting started in the speaking business, Tanya and I sold the magazines in 1999. I went on the speaking circuit and I was like, I'm going to go be a speaker. I'd been involved in Toastmasters and I really loved speaking. So I was like, I'm going to go do this. In fact, I asked my wife said, you're too young to retire. I think I was 35 at the time. She said, you're too young to retire. What are you going to do next? And I said, well, I always wanted to write books and speak. She said, I think you ought to go do that. So I got out there and tried to be a speaker. And in my first 6 months, it was a debacle. I mean, it was really bad. I made $2,400, sold $2,400 worth of speeches in my first 6 months. You can't make a living, can't do very well on that kind of thing. So I'll talk about that maybe another time, but I ended up getting a mentor who taught me the business. But one of my first big speeches was a closing keynote address for Air Conditioning Contractors of America. I went and spoke on their stage, all expenses paid, plus I got paid $2,500 fee. But at the end of that presentation, I sold my training program and made $32,000 from that 45-minute keynote, plus the $2,500 little tiny fee I'd gotten at the time, plus all expenses for my family and I to go to Las Vegas. So it was the beginning. But that industry, I got started getting booked to go around and speak at other state and national association meetings for ACCA, and then I spoke for some of the corporations. So let's fast forward about 2 years after that. Um, I had this idea, and I was like, what if I were to interview the top contractors in that association, air conditioning contractors, and we put a book together? And so my wife and I interviewed, I think it was 10 or 12 contractors, and then we had them transcribed, had the recordings. And this is back in the old days where, I mean, I literally plugged a phone into a cassette recorder and recorded the phone conversations and then had them transcribed. But my wife and I then took those transcripts and we wrote this book together because she was the editor in our magazine publishing company, so she did all the editorial stuff. And we created a book called The Ultimate Contractor: Insider Secrets from Industry Leaders, and it had the ACCA logo on it. I don't know if you can see that. ACCA bought a copy of this book for every member of their association and every person who showed up at the next national conference. I wasn't even booked as a keynote speaker at that particular conference, but they had me come to the opening general session where they gave everybody, they had put the book on everybody's spot at the round tables. And there was an opening keynote. They had a great speaker for an opening keynote speech. But during that opening session, general session, which is where everybody's at, they had me stand up. They introduced the book and they said, JP will be speaking this afternoon and he'll be talking about all these insider secrets that he's gotten from some of our greatest contractors, most successful contractors here in the association. So fast forward to that afternoon, I usually go to my room about an hour before and make sure everything's in place, PowerPoint's working, all that kind of stuff. And then I'll leave. I'll put on headphones. I have this whole, ritual that I go through, put in headphones, listen to some great music, go over my opening, make sure that I feel comfortable and confident to go on that stage. Well, I went back down to the room about 15 minutes before, and as I came down the hall, I could see it. It was a mass of people outside the room. And as I got closer, I realized this mass, this you know, compacted crowd of people went into the room. And so I wove my way through because I had to get into my room, and I wove my way through. And um, I could see. And in fact, I had hired camera people to come and film that presentation. So they're in the back of the room. They can't, the room is full, standing room only, full outside, people standing. I couldn't even hardly get up to the stage. So finally, one of the meeting planners for ACCA comes to me and says, this is not going to work. We've got another room. It's three times the size of this room. We want to move you down the hall and put you in that room. It's going to take us about 10 minutes to reposition. So this was like 15 minutes before I was supposed to start. It's going to take us about 10 minutes to reposition. And so my camera people had to grab all their tripods, all their stuff, and run down the hall and try to get back in pace. So anyway, about 20 minutes later, I think we got started about 5 minutes late, but about 20 minutes later, I walk on the stage in a room three times that size, people standing room only with their backs against the wall. So we packed out a room three times the size of the room I was supposed to have. Why? Because I had interviewed the people that they respected and considered the experts and authorities on what they were trying to do. So you got every Mary and John and Bill and Bob trying to build their own air conditioning business, and they've respected these other icons in their industry. And I took the time to interview them and extract the best information that they had. And so to give you kind of an idea, chapter one is secrets to success. Chapter two, hiring people. Chapter three, training people. Chapter four, managing people. Chapter five, motivating people. Chapter six, performance systems. Chapter seven, competitive edge. Chapter eight, attracting customers. Chapter nine, building customer loyalty. Chapter 10, increasing sales. And chapter 11, increasing profits. That was all the answers that I got that they wanted. And so they came out in mass to hear what I had to say. And again, I wasn't even the keynote speaker at the event. And I say that to say this, that there is a great power in what I call authority jacking, which is taking somebody else's knowledge and expertise and all of that and consuming it, putting your own thoughts and perspective and spin on it and pushing it back out to the world. It can be extremely powerful.
It's so powerful, yeah. And I see how I run this podcast year by year, and I see how I grow, and as a host, and also with the amazing people, because we are not still the same person every single day. And after this call, I'm not going to be the same person as it was before, because I learned we have interaction today and your amazing story. So, and JP, can you share with us about your program for people who wanted to start podcast, just to follow the audience? Because there are many questions I have, but the time is a little bit time consuming. We will have, we are so busy, so we will have again our conversation but today maybe just about your business at the moment, and who do you mostly work with, and who do you help in terms of podcasting. So because we mentioned you have a lot of experience in different areas of business.
I find that people get interested in podcasting. Maybe they see somebody, they want to be the next Joe Rogan, or they do see it like I see it from a very um, business perspective, meaning it doesn't matter if you have 10,000 downloads or not, right, per episode. What matters is do you have meaningful conversations with the right people? And then do you repurpose that content in a way that serves your audience? So a podcast can be very powerful for that. And because of that, I find that whether you're a local business owner, and I'll give you an example, let's say a chiropractor in a local market, or whether you're building a SaaS company. So let's use those two against each other, right? And juxtapose those. So if I'm a chiropractor, I need to start a podcast in my local market. And the first thing I want to do is interview every other complementary, non-competing wellness expert in my local city. So iridologists, Reiki people, massage therapists, people that deal with skin disorders, whatever it might be, a nutritionist, physical therapist, gym coach, personal trainer, someone that helps people get in shape, weight loss experts, maybe aesthetics people, so med spas and stuff like that. I want to go and interview everybody. Why? Because all of them are serving in most cases, all of them are serving the exact same people that I serve or want to serve. So if you look at the average person that goes to a chiropractor, that's an alternative treatment, right? As opposed to going to a doctor and getting a cortisone shot or something like that for back pain or neck pain or whatever. So think about the mindset and the ICP or ideal customer profile for a person that goes to a chiropractor. They also probably are open to and maybe already consuming other alternative health or wellness professions, services, right? So if you think about that, it's very likely that those other practitioners who don't compete with you, they're not chiropractors, have your same target customer out there and could bring those same people to you. So it's a very powerful way to build a network and to create some content that could get SEO optimized in your local market on the internet to draw in and attract the same kind of people that you want in your chiropractic practice. Now, there are many other, as I mentioned, I don't want to like beat the same dead horse, but not only creating the content, not only the networking, but also the ability to position yourself as an authority. So you're going to ask questions, but you're also probably going to say a few things along the way that make sense on those episodes. So you're not just going to be Oprah and interview people. You're going to say something that makes sense, just like you have today, right? You're the host, but you have thoughts and perspectives and things that you share along the way. So that's what I would do tomorrow. And that's one of the things that we're doing right now is we're creating a national network of local podcasts in a variety of niche markets. So like we own justiceshow.com. We're building a national network of legal podcasts, local legal podcasts, where we work with one law firm or attorney in each market. So we'll have the Justice Show of New York, the Justice Show of Dallas, the Justice Show of Miami, etc. And we'll end up with 100, 200, 500 shows over the next few years as we scale that. And we're doing the same thing in real estate. We're doing the same thing in wellness. We're doing the same. We own a domain visitorshow.com. So the same thing in tourism and visitorship, out of town visitors, that sort of thing. So when somebody comes to town, they want to know what are the best restaurants, what are the best places to stay, what are the best attractions. If I've got kids, what are the top 10 things that I should do with my kids while I'm in town? And you can create that kind of content by interviewing all the people that own the attractions and the lodging and the restaurants and the bars and all that kind of stuff in town. So I'm a big believer in local businesses, Main Street businesses, using podcasting as a vehicle for growth because it will let them network, it will let them build alliances, it will let them create um, relationships with the other people that serve the same target customer as them, as well as position themselves as an authority, as well as create great content that can be put out there that could be keyword optimized. Hey, so let's talk about the top five things to do with kids when you're in Tampa. So you talk about that. Well, that information gets logged into the search engines, whether it's YouTube or Google or whatever. So when people are searching, those things can come up. So it can be very powerful. Then you take on a national level, as I said, let's say let's take us, like PowerSuite. If I'm building a SaaS platform and it has a variety of features, well, people don't buy features, they buy benefits. They don't care about the drill bit. They want a hole in the wood. And really, at the end of the day, they want a beautiful thing that they can put on the wall or whatever it is, nice set of cabinets, etc. So the drill bit is almost irrelevant, but it's a necessity, right? So if I'm selling software like us, and let's say that software will help them get more reviews and get 5-star reviews, et cetera. Well, I'm not going to go out there from a podcast or a content perspective and talk about, software and writing code and all of that. I'm going to say, if you are running a restaurant or if you're running a chiropractic service or you're a doctor or you're a massage therapist or you're a hair stylist, when people learn about you, the first thing they do is go look you up on the internet and they see how many reviews you have and how many of those reviews are 4.5, 5-star reviews. They want to know, is this person worth going to? What did people say about them? Well, we created a process and a system and a platform that will help you gather reviews from all of your clients in a really frictionless, seamless way. It'll automatically follow up with them. Maybe give, let's say you're a restaurant, give them a free appetizer offer for leaving a review or whatever that might be. And it'll continue to follow up. And our system, when somebody goes to leave a review, they first go through kind of a little bit of a process that will find out if they were happy or not. If they're not happy, then you're going to intervene and say, how can we make you happy? But if they were really happy, then it takes them and lets them leave a great review. And that'll help you get more customers. It'll help you get people back. It'll help you stay in front of your existing clients with that follow-up system. So I would talk about it in terms of that on a podcast or whatever I was doing content-wise, rather than talking about, oh yeah, we wrote some really cool code and there's this form and all the features and the little itty bitty stuff of it. So a business that's national, a business that's local, the business that's global can certainly use podcasting, hosting, and or guesting. And I do both. I have my own shows as well as here I am sitting on your
Yeah.
show. So do
And
both. Yeah,
And
guest,
can
be a
you,
host.
in terms of, can you share with us the name of your show and also who are mostly who are your client, who are your guest speakers? How do you connect with them? And also, do you plan to do that community and global level as well, as you mentioned for podcasting network, like all those in local market? In national in US. So do you plan to do it maybe on a global level? Because I'm interested because I to the other part of the world. So,
Absolutely. So we're building a network on, I think this might be how you and I originally connected. Did we talk about my People Builders brand?
it could
That
be.
seems like so years ago, when I first started going on the speaking circuit, and my mentor taught me how to do these videos. Remember, I said I sold that first big speech, I sold $32,000 worth of training. It was a monthly video series called People Builders. And I would go on stage. My big keynote address back then was called Business Builders, Business Busters. Look who's wrecking your company and what you can do to stop them. And I would speak and talk about business ownership and getting your people to think and act like owners in the workplace and take personal responsibility and treat the business as if their own and be, motivated and excited and perform and all these. So I'd talk about these things. And this was always in front of business owners and leaders and CEOs. And then at the end of my speech, I would say, it's the chosen few who get to come and hear me speak and go home and try to change the forgotten many. You're going to go back to your employees and you're going to say, hey, here's this idea. We're going to meet once a week. We're going to do blah, 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 blah. And they're going to be like, oh, yeah, Bob's back with flavor of the month, right? He went to a conference and got all excited. Now he's going to try to come interrupt our workflow and our jobs, with his newest idea. And I said, I'm going to give you a tool. And so then I would show them how they could use my training series. And it would be a monthly video that would have posters and worksheets and all that, that they could conduct a little coffee and donuts training once a month or a lunch and learn or something like that. And literally a secretary or an assistant or someone, they didn't have to have any training or facilitation experience. They just put the tape in. This was back in VHS tape days. They put the tape in, hit the play button, hit pause at the right times, stop, do the exercises, hand out the posters, hand out the capture your thoughts card at the end, collect those, blah, blah, blah. So in 1 hour, they can have a really productive, valuable meeting that would get everybody focused on how do we make ourselves and this company a better place. And so I said, build your people and let your people build your business. And so I held on to that brand all these years, that peoplebuilders.com domain. And we are launching, as we're now working with, you pinpointed it, global thought leaders like yourself that have podcasts. Anyone who is a podcaster that, in our opinion, this is kind of a broad umbrella, is having an impact on the mind, body, spirit, finances. They're either teaching or educating or interviewing around personal development, self-growth, improvement, could be nutrition, could be carnivore diet, or it could be time management, or it could be relationships, or it could be finance. We anything that's growth and improvement, people builders related, we're going to be putting those on what we hope is going to be several thousand shows on this peoplebuilders.com brand. So that network will be launching. It'll probably be fourth quarter of this year, maybe third quarter, but fourth quarter of this year.
You will give me all information, and I will put all information below this show today, like on YouTube, and it's going to be on Apple and Spotify. This show is on 20 platforms. I mean, audio, so like Apple, Amazon, I don't know, FeedSpot, Podchaser, and other. So
But to answer your question, yes, we're building a network, and we're going to take it a step further. So it'll be the network, but we'll also have a publication like a magazine, online and print periodically, where we repurpose that content from these podcasts into written form, as well as having an option for people to publish books off their podcast and all of these other things. Again, I think that podcasting, I know we're getting close to time here, but podcasting does have that ability to create a body of work or an asset base of valuable content in many different formats. And yeah, that's why I'm so bullish on the idea. But you asked about a program or a course. We're going to give away, and so we can put the link if you want. We're going to give away a training on how to not just launch a podcast, but launch a profitable podcast that makes money either through your business or selling merch or selling information or getting you in the right places, the right rooms and doors so that you can speak or whatever. And we're going to be giving away that free course. So you can put that link out there after this comes out.
thank you so very much. And can you just tell us a little bit? I think that I read it, but about the name of your podcast. I'm not quite sure to pronounce it or something like that.
No, that's great. I'm recording a series right now called The Undisputed Authority. And that's where I say, if you're already an expert in your space, meaning you've got years of experience, you're not checking Chat GPT to figure out what you should say, right? You know your stuff. There's another word we could use other than stuff, but you know your stuff. If you're that expert, and people often come to you and say, hey, how do you do this? Can I pick your brain? They do that all the time, right? When I meet you at the conference, can we sit down over coffee and I learn what? So if you're already an expert, then we can show you how to become the authority, and not just the authority, the undisputed authority. So I'm going to be writing a book off of this, but we have this podcast series that I'm doing right now with people who are great experts, and they can actually go to undisputedauthority.com, and they can get on the list for when the book comes out. We're going to be giving away the book when it comes out, as well as they could also, if they think that they would be a good guest, they'll be able to apply to be a guest on the show as well. And I'd love to have you as a guest on that show. I know you've written books. I know you've done a variety of things. So
Yes, I'm
I'd love to
co-author of
have
the
you.
book Global Women in Business, like in that way. It was 5 years ago. So, I will put all links jpmaroney.com.
Mhm.
This is all information on your website, and also your freebie, what you have for that training, which you mentioned. And I will put all links about that, what you mentioned, the last one, like that people can connect or to be a guest speaker or whatever. And I hope and believe, just feel invited for our next session, to our next episode very soon.
Sounds good. Happy to come back, happy to share. And I really do appreciate you inviting me on. Hope everyone got the value they were looking for. But yeah, they're welcome to go to jpmaroney.com or connect with me on LinkedIn or something. And any questions that someone has as they're listening to this, write them down and then send me your questions. I respond to questions, so I'll be happy to answer them.
JP, thank you so. I know you have a lot, of work today and obligation. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure having you, and you just created shared amazing story and give us a lot of knowledge. So see you very soon. Wish you a lot of success to you and your family, and your business and life, and see you very soon in our next episode. next
Thanks,
show.
Christina.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Have a lovely day and bye for now.
you. Ciao.
Bye.